Hello, everyone, and welcome to a whole new chapter, a whole new episode of the Caring Support podcast. I'm here with my partner, James Smith, who will introduce us to our amazing guest for today. Go ahead, James.
Thank you, Laura. It's always great to see you. I want to introduce the lovely Pamela, and I'm not going to even attempt to try and say your last name just in case. I know we had this conversation once before.
No
Maybe you could
worries.
tell us how do you say your last name again, Pam?
Stoikopoulos. It's very similar to Workopolis, so we're good.
Okay, so I'm going to
Easy.
call you Workopolis from now on. Um, so, so Pamela, it's great to meet you. I know we talked a couple of weeks ago, and
We did.
and I thought, wow, we really need to really show our community, our network, what's going on with Pam, with the recent changes you've made. But you bring a lot of really interesting concepts and innovation to healthcare, and thought that it would be very prudent of us to ensure that our community understood what it is that you do. So perhaps maybe I could ask you to sort of do a quick introduction of yourself and a high level view as to what's going on, please.
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Pam Stoikopoulos. Thank you guys so much for having me today. I am the founder and CEO of Big Eye Innovation, which is an innovation consulting firm that is focused really in the health and wellness space, government and not-for-profit. Um, uh, so I have a long and storied history in the healthcare space. For a number of years, I was the head of innovation engagement at a large home care organization. And before that, I was in the PR and communications world as both a consultant and in the healthcare space. So I bring kind of a storied past to my present scenario. So I see things from a lot of different angles. And yeah, so I founded Big Eye because I really see the need in healthcare for organizations to take a design thinking based approach to healthcare. And design thinking is an interesting kind of concept. It sounds kind of out there, I think, for a lot of people, but it really is sort of a practical tool in helping you to understand the background or the circumstances, the context of a situation, to figure out what problems are like the most pressing and need to be solved. And then defining that problem and then charting a course of action in a very kind of focused and disciplined way, so that you can find the low-hanging fruit for the near term and plan for the future in the long term, which, the longer term, we always say there's a great quote by Bill Gates that says people I think it's I'm paraphrasing now, but it's people overestimate the amount of change that's going to happen in the next 3 years and underestimate what's going to happen in 10. And if you think about I think COVID maybe has changed that quote a little bit, because we've seen some really rapid changes and adjustments in healthcare in the last couple of years. And I'd say COVID, in some ways, as terrible as it is, has really given healthcare a kick in the pants that it needed to get going and accelerated a number of things.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And I know from our personal point of view, there is no question that initially what happened, of course, was we knew healthcare had some challenges, and then what the pandemic has done is just ripped, we'll say, the Band-Aid off that did the temporary fixes and exposed a lot of things for what it is. And we know that. And the question is what have we learned? What are we going to do to apply ourselves better? And to incorporate a lot of, like, your concepts are very interesting, because it takes a whole different approach to seeing how, processes, procedures, policies, and healthcare is absolutely, laden with bureaucracy, policies, what have you. And there's what we come across against a lot, Pam, is to be honest, is a lot of people are fear of the change, and they're running from fire to fire to fire. And then that concept is a cyclical thing that never ends, purely because you need to step back and say, okay, now wait a minute. We need to really reevaluate what we're doing. It doesn't matter if it's the hiring practices, retention, the procedures internally, or how they communicate externally. So yeah, I mean, I think what you're doing is fantastic. The question is give us an idea, like who would be the kind of places that should be looking to you, and what would they get working with you?
So I think that generally I'm very comfortable in the healthcare space, and so I will say that I'm actually also a patient. So I have an autoimmune condition that that is really well managed. But so I see things from both sides of the coin. So as somebody who has worked in healthcare, I understand the bureaucracy and the pain points. And then as a patient, I also understand the frustrations of being a patient and where you want to see action. So I think where I really see myself as the most comfortable is in that healthcare space. In organizations, I think the word innovation is a really loaded term, and I think a lot of home care is a great example. People think of it as sort of a meat and potatoes kind of service that we provide, or that home care provides to people. But really, there are so many opportunities to streamline processes, to improve experiences, to build quality into whatever you're doing. I was just talking to a former CEO this morning, and she was really getting me on to think more deeply about how quality is really something that obviously healthcare organizations care about. So I think I really see myself as helping healthcare specifically to think more deeply about the processes, to think more deeply about the way they approach problems and how they define those problems, and then find solutions, not just focusing on the loudest and the most senior person in the room, but really developing a perspective that is a partnered perspective where you're getting a diverse group of people to bring their insights. Because what you always want to do, healthcare is all about mitigating risk. And what is so great about using a design thinking based approach is that you're finding a path to test those riskiest assumptions very quickly, so that people make assumptions, and the worst thing you can do is base an entire program on one person's assumption. So what I do is to help healthcare organizations to map out a plan, and then to decide on a course of action, and how we're going to test those assumptions to see if we're going in the right direction, so that we don't get 5 miles down before we say, oh, you know what, our patients really hate this, or oh no, there's a real risk over here. So I think that I bring the process that I bring to the table is strategic. It's strategically connected, but it also really aligns with the get it done kind of attitude that I think patients are really clamoring to see. And we talk about co-design a lot, and having been a patient in a number of different circles, I can say that the co-design patients are really anxious to feel like they've accomplished something and done something, and like that they're really adding value. And so this is a really active way to engage patients, to engage frontline staff, and to engage that leadership, where we always think of like the leaders are at the table making the decisions. But this process, this approach really brings everybody together, so that you get that full 360 view of whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Right. I love it. That's great. I think what I love most about what you said there, even though all of it was fantastic, is the fact that when you're bringing in all we'll call it stakeholders, for lack of a better term. You're bringing in the patient, you're bringing
Mm-hmm.
in the upper management, we'll say, you're bringing in the frontline staff, you're bringing in everybody who's involved from start to finish, including the patient side, which is a great opportunity for one of my favorite things, and that involves the use of empathy, emotional intelligence, so that we can really say, you know what, this is not just, don't think of this as a practice or about the money or about the stuck on procedural concepts, but rather saying, think about the client, we'll say the customer or patient experience first, and what does it take to execute that in a much more you know, organized and better fashion that starts taking into account. But I thought was cool too was your concept on starting off early to help people understand it, that there are going to be predispositions of fear. Are we going to do? Is this the right way to approach this? Is this So that's excellent. I think for us, when we built Caring Support, we thought, hey, let's take the hiring funnel and flip it on its head, and let's come up with in a way of doing this. And yeah, we work with people closely all the time to provide the customer service. There's so many job boards are just not going to do this, because we understand that as simple as our platform is to use and cost effective, the big challenge is really about adoption. It's really about just having people say, hey, you know what? If you try this out, you'll see that it will make a big difference. It will save you a ton of time and a lot of money. And and I think it's we're always going to have these battles in life when it comes to how people perceive things. But your approach of working at this more proactively and taking people down a road at first that says, hey, let's find out whether or not this is the path that we should be taking, rather than let's go down this path and hope for the best, right?
Absolutely. And I think, I was going to talk a little bit about the trends that I see on the horizon. And so
Yes.
one of those trends is just it's a trend. It's not an innovative trend, but the response to it is, we definitely are seeing a real staffing crisis, right? In healthcare across the board,
Yeah.
particularly in long-term care and home care. And so I think what we are seeing is the emergence of a number of tech companies like Caring Support, who are really trying to up the game. I think for a long time, long-term care and home care have really not changed their model, particularly their hiring practices over the last, 15, 20 years. And I think, it's great to see some tech that is responding to kind of, it is churn. Like it is a hard business to be in. It is a hard business to staff. And so I think the easier you can make it, the more frictionless you can make that experience for workers coming in. I think it creates a kind of a more welcoming environment for them. And then I think it also, takes some of the heat off of HR, where I think they're drowning right now. And I think I wouldn't, I don't envy them. I think it is a really, really tough gig to be in right now. And I think, responsive softwares like Caring Support are really a great way of trying to kind of flip things on their head and, simplify the process. And I think that's the whole thing. I think people think of innovation as, newfangled spaceships and drones dropping off packages. But there is a place for robots in home care. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely on my list. But I think, but I also think that there is, there are ways to streamline and simplify that are innovative, right? And so I think that innovation isn't just about taking like way out there kind of ideas. It's about applying technology in different ways and making things easier for people. Uber didn't really invent the technology. They just found a way to make that tech valuable and meaningful to people, and create a frictionless experience for people.
That's a great example. It really is. And continuing with the trends, I know you're writing an article about this.
I am.
And
it's turning into a very long article. I might have to break it up.
well, but you know what? On the top of your head, what are the 5 trends that you're seeing in healthcare?
Right. So one I think is the staffing shortage, which is just it's becoming crisis level. So I think it is a real opportunity for tech companies to get in there to optimize. We see tech companies streamlining recruitment and also optimizing the staff that they do have. So you see other companies doing that as well, and they're starting to get some traction as well. The idea of in-home health hubs is definitely another trend. I think that's going to continue, and so we keep talking about home care because we know home care is where people want to be. We're starting to see a decline in the price of tech. We're starting to see some really interesting things. I've been talking with the director of Best Buy Health. So they have a program now, a monitoring program. We're starting to see those prices come down. We're starting to see real retailers. Walmart is getting into the space. We know Google has been in there and Amazon as well into that healthcare space. But I really do see that sort of. I know there's another futurist out there who calls it the homespital, right? So really operating at home. But I think one of the reasons that that's probably going to happen is now because of virtual care. So virtual care in the last 2 years is just really amped right up.
Yeah.
And as much as governments say they like home care, they're still not funding it. But how they're going to fund it probably is through hospitals doing virtual care at home. So I think there will be some sort of combo there. And I think, as we see the younger boomers and, dare I say it, the Xers moving into the space, they're a little more comfortable with technology and a little less suspicious of it. So I really do see that as a continuing trend. I also think that virtual is probably going to be the predominant model moving forward. I don't know that we're going to go back to pre-pandemic, going to see your doctor in the office every time. I think you will have, maybe a annual appointment instead of, a quarterly one. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that. The other one, I think we keep talking about it, and I think it's going to get to a deeper level, is the idea of patient as partner. And I think that I start to see that. And as I said, I don't think it's quite there yet. I think right now it's patient as advisor or patient as, we're gonna run something by you. But I really do think patients and caregivers are going to demand to be part of any solution that is developed by healthcare. And I think if you don't partner with them, I think you do so at your own peril. But I think it's also because, I just think about myself going to the doctor. I'm armed with information. I have done my research. I've done my homework. I have an opinion about things when I go in. And of course, your doctor is a trusted advisor and should always be a trusted advisor. But I think, we have so much more information. My condition is rare, but what you see in the social spaces is so interesting because there are lots of thousands of orphan diseases out there that don't have a lot of funding, that don't have a lot of knowledge base that's been committed to them.
Right.
But what you do see is patients getting together and collecting that knowledge. And what's happened now is there's a really interesting healthcare crowdsourcing app. It's not an app, it's a platform. It's a crowdsourcing platform called Stuff That Works. And what they're doing is they're starting to collate all this information of all these different diseases and asking patients to contribute to them. So I see that sort of crowdsourcing coming together, and they just got $9 million in funding. So I think back in 2020. So I really do see that as the future. And I think one of the founders is part of Waze. So they have a lot of the tech background. So I think that that's a really interesting place to see where that data comes in. And so that was my other trend, was the data. And so crowdsourcing is one of those things. I think we're going to see some interesting things. There's a lot of talk right now, and I got very, very excited. I wrote a long blog post about this, about NFTs, so non-fungible tokens, which sounds, again, if you go to my blog, you can I have a very easy explainer video about what NFTs are and how they could possibly transform health records. So right now, our patient data is not owned by the patient. And I don't know if you've ever tried to had an experience where you've had to try to get health records, but I have driven across Toronto to get an MRI result to deliver to another doctor on the other side of town that may not be compatible. So NFTs will possibly, if they can figure it out, be like kind of the central place where your data resides, but not only that, where patients could have the potential to own their data and make decisions about their data and how it's collected. So right now, we're using Facebook for free, but really, data is a commodity and people are selling our data all over the place. So I think it'll be really interesting to see where that goes in the next 10 years, and whether NFTs do actually get used in healthcare, so that we actually take ownership of our own data, which I really, really am excited about. Also, I think AI, as part of that whole data trend, is going to continue to be something worth looking at. There's a great podcast by Accenture that talks about a collection of data, and how healthcare adds some special privacy issues that they need to be concerned with. And so there's some interesting ways that they collect data to train AI, to train AI. So one is called Federated Learning. And so there's a great podcast, again, in my blog post that I will be posting soon, about that. So, and then I think, the other one is just really, it seems like maybe a buzzword, but the idea of organizational agility. I think healthcare has not been very agile in the past, but I think they had to be in the last 2 years. It's pretty interesting once you light a fire under somebody, how quickly telemedicine, telehealth can get done. But I think part of that, it feeds into that patient partnership piece. I think when you see patients demanding things and having some expectations, I think organizations are going to have to be more agile. They're going to have to move faster. Healthcare is going to have to up its game in how it responds. And I mean, Canada's a little bit special. I think particularly if you look at Canada versus the US,
Right.
It is very, because of socialized medicine, I think there's a very different mindset in the US, where you see some real agility there, because they're trying to get, we're kind of holding the doors back on patients, whereas they're trying to get more into their hospital or their clinic. But I do see that as a really necessary quality in healthcare organizations, which is, I think, why I'm really so excited about launching this business, because I think that I certainly can help in kind of creating that innovator's mindset, that agile mindset, that ready for anything, planning for the best, expecting the worst, figuring out how to be responsive and flexible in an approach. Yeah. So I think those are the top 5. I think I covered all 5 of them.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, by the way. There was a lot in there, Pam.
I know.
Yeah, that's okay. No, in a good way. I mean that in a good way. I mean, and this is the thing, like you have a great overall understanding. You're keeping up on innovation and innovative ideas that are existing, and some of them might be still at their, let's say, early stages. I know I talked to a gentleman the other day involved with Canada Info, the Info Way, I think it's called, for digital
Yep.
health and digital
Health
records,
info, yeah.
yeah, and they're leveraging AI. They're a lot of that is going to make a massive impact. Absolutely, I think a lot of times when we have so much technology at our disposal, it's really a case of it's two things that happen: is how are we using it, and then what's our level of, let's say, imagination and how we should use it. That's often
Yep.
what keeps it from really accomplishing more than it can.
Yeah.
The NFT thing, I thought that was very fascinating. I've been reading on NFTs a lot recently, understanding how people have, ownership on the blockchain, and that,
Yeah.
and therefore they have the ability to actually, it's kind of like, if I bought something in the, we'll say the real world, the tangible world, whether it is like the standard NFT, like a piece of art, but I bought, let's say, a Picasso, like if any of us could afford a Picasso, but
Mhm.
let's suppose some artist that, was realistically priced, at the end of the day, do you have anything that really conclusively proves that you have the original, the one and only original
Yeah.
of that artwork? And so this is the beauty. Now they're talking about saying, look, if we take this same model, we could use this to buy vehicles, we could use this to acquire housing, to a variety of things. So to use it in the healthcare space, I think that's phenomenal, no question.
I think it's interesting because these things seem kind of out there at the start when you first hear about them, and you're like, well, how does that work? But I mean, if you really stop and think about the idea of money, right?
Yep.
If you really think conceptually, like this is a concept we've all agreed is this is how we're going to, create transactions. It seems like a kind of out there concept, right? It's
Yeah.
it's all on certain presumptions, based on certain presumptions. So I think that half of innovation is creative application of something that could be a standard technology,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well,
So
think about the fact that as much as social media has tremendous merit, it's often been a place for people to get a voice that never had one before. And in some cases, I hate to say this, some of them shouldn't have been given it in the first place. And
yep.
you know, and so, but you see stuff, and sometimes it's hate or it's whatever, and now we have so much information, everything in our phone and whatever, that it's gotten to the point that we become really more disconnected.
Hmm.
So when you look at, for instance, what we were doing, you were like, one of the things I absolutely love and known for in my community is networking. And I'm going, well, what's really great about what we're doing is we bring people together, not just to say, hey, here's your matchup for getting jobs and making that faster, but all the tools in it remind me of being able to network with people, whether that's virtually or in person. And therefore, with that in mind, it's just a different experience because, so many people miss being able to be around each other with this
Yep.
pandemic. It pushed us outside their comfort zone. And it was tough in the beginning. It was very tough. And then people found out real fast that, wait a minute, this is a good thing. It gave people a lot of time to reflect and realize, wow, why am I going to the office every single day, living in downtown Toronto or someplace where I'm paying an insane amount of money, and I could be living where I really want to live, by the water. Hey, they got broadband internet. I can work from home. I don't need to be in the office. My job is totally virtual, in the sense of remote, I should say. So yeah, I mean, but anyway, I think it's great what you're doing, Pam, and
Thank you.
and I should get back to Laura here. So mic drop here for a minute.
Thank you, James. Really, no, those were all the questions we had for you, Pam. So we just really want to thank you for your time and your innovative ideas. I think it's very refreshing to hear somebody that is really interested in healthcare, but from a completely new perspective and has so many plans and can bring so much to the table. So I really thank you. Caring Support is a community, and now you're part of it.
Yeah, I
So
really appreciate the time and really great to be part of this podcast. I think you guys are doing some great work. And yeah, I think that I'm really excited for you and your future as well. So thanks so much.